One of the harshest realities I had to face was it finally resonated with me that hard work alone is not enough.
If you want to get promoted, you have to be
Yeah,
productive.
yeah.
That comes with impact. Terry, you want to go ahead and take us to the next point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, how to focus at work without burning out?
Mm,
How
Yeah.
to focus at work. Now, granted, Rob, I'm listening closely, man, because I face this every day. So how because my like this morning, my morning started at 4:30. I'm like, you know what? Let me take a look at that problem. I'm up. Oh, so I'm listening, bro. I'm listening. I'm listening.
Yeah.
so Rob, why does multitasking typically undermine advancement, right? Because everybody feels like, the better you are, the more you can do at the same time. But, talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, at a basic level, I would distill it down to this. I think multitasking creates an illusion of productivity that scatters attention, and it's
Mm,
ultimately the foundation of why we burn out in the first place. I think back to you might recall years ago, I'll leave the person's name out of it, but the person was the CEO of Yahoo at the time, and they prided themselves on working 20 hours a day. I
mhm,
used to be there, by the way. So,
mm,
present company, you know, here to say, um, I thought that the more I worked, the harder I worked, the more valuable I'd be. I learned
mm,
quickly that we aren't machines, even though we might want to believe we are.
mhm,
And so I want to go back to something I talked about a little earlier about, you know, treating everything as a firefighting mission. Uh, when you're always in the heat of the battle and you're always putting fires out, and you're not working to prevent fires, it's cyclical in nature. It's repetitive in nature.
mhm,
I think we have to go back and ask ourselves, what are the things that we're doing that aren't bringing value? And I call it the subtraction model. Let's
mm,
subtract those things, even if it's one thing that you can subtract a day that reduces the demand, the pressure, the stress.
mm, mm,
And you have to look at it. If you're subtracting something that isn't materially making a difference one way or another to those KPIs that I mentioned earlier,
mhm,
get rid
mhm.
of it.
Yeah.
Reduce
Yeah.
the number of things that you have to do.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think I was one of those also who thought that the more you can do at one time, the more productive you were, and that is not true because scientifically it has been stated that the mind can only focus on one thing at a time. We never truly multitask. We task switch really fast, right? But the mind can only focus on one thing at a time, and if you're spread between too many different things, right, you're not getting any one thing done well. And to your point, Rob, there are some things that are gonna give you greater value if you complete them first versus other things, right?
Yeah.
And if we all honest, we tend to gravitate toward the least path of resistance, the things that are easy, right? Talk about that, Rob. I mean, because at some point you have to, in your career, come to a grips with yourself to say, "Hey, I need to go get these hard things done,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, Ralph. So I learned this lesson a couple times through life. I guess the best analogy is when you go to the gym.
Mm,
And if you're lifting weights. If you've ever lifted weights before, there's this anxiety that sets in. If you throw too much weight on the uh, dumbbell or the barbell, then worst case scenario, you're going to drop it. You're going to feel
mhm,
foolish. People are going to look around because they'll hear a loud noise, or you know you'll injure yourself. You'll drop it on yourself.
mhm,
Um, Part of growing and learning is accepting failure and
mhm,
learning from the failure. So, when I was in the gym, like Terry had said, I was one of those guys up at 4:30 in the morning, and I did my best work at 4:30 in the morning, and it was at the gym because I was thinking about my day and all the things that I need to do. and I was pushing myself to lift more weights, to have good form.
Mhm.
And I learned from others that were around me I mean, you might be surprised at how few people are in a gym at 4:30 in the morning. But that's where the real work gets done. And
Mm,
so what I often learned, during those times was the only way I'm gonna get stronger, the only way I'm gonna get faster, the only way I'm gonna become more efficient is to push myself and have
Mhm.
others push me, people that believe in me, people that trust me, that will protect me from myself. I mentioned that a
Mhm.
little earlier.
Mhm.
Those are some of the dynamics that I learned, from from the gym. Now let me add one other dynamic. Most people who know me know that I spent a fair amount of time umpiring professional baseball, which was just a
mm.
wonderfully enriching experience. And what I've learned on the baseball diamond translates to the boardroom. And so one of the struggles that I'd had year after year, the professional athletes were in their 20s, but I was not. I was in my 30s, then I was in my 40s, and all of a sudden, when 50s are knocking at the door, how do you compete at that highest level with people that are by design faster,
Mhm.
perhaps even smarter than you? You
Mhm.
have to change your approach, you have to change your game, you have to humble yourself and learn that these years of experience that you've amassed can be applied, but you have to apply it differently because what worked for you yesterday is not often going to work for you today.
That's so good. That's so good. Terry, were you gonna jump in?
Wow. Man, no, he got me at baseball. That's my game, man. Oh, man. I'd love to hear some of those stories one day. So, Rob, I'm just letting you know, I'm inviting myself over now. So there's 2 reasons why I'm coming over. So, man. But no, I think what you shared is really great. And I think for some of our listeners who are in that 45, 55, whatever age range, I think that piece of information is invaluable, right? Because everyone has to at some point sit back and realize that the bar is moving, especially with AI, right? The bar
Yeah.
is moving. So how do you I don't even want to say compete. I want to say continue to um how do you continue to drive towards your passion although you may see the game changing a little?
Yeah. Gosh, Terry, that's such a profound question. And I struggle with it with baseball in particular. And you and I will absolutely share our passion for that game. But if we stay with baseball, and then I'll translate it into the business realm. In fact, I made a post about this on LinkedIn recently. When you're in your 50s and maybe you have decades, 30 years of experience in an industry, or maybe even with the same company,
Mhm.
uh, that it can be shocking and polarizing. You process all these emotions. Um, when all of a sudden you're in a transition
Mhm.
because something has changed. Look, the one constant in our lives is change, and we have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Uh,
Mhm.
Going back to the baseball analogy, um, I had to quickly adapt my approach to the game. In today's realm, the game is very different than it was when I was a part of the professional game. Small things like the bases are a different size.
Mhm.
Um, there's speed up rules, and those rules are designed to enhance the fan experience. In business, that's the user experience. So what you
Mhm.
and Ralph are keen to is we're perpetually tweaking the experience. In Ralph's realm, the member experience is the North Star. We
Right.
must ensure that we are ahead of the curve because the member of a credit union is younger, just
Mm.
like the baseball player is
Mm.
younger.
Mhm.
They are looking for and demanding a specific experience that is different from a member that is 20 years older, 30 years older.
So true. Yeah. So true. So true. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. That's so good. So, it kind of goes back to that whole protecting your ability to have really deep, productive type work versus, being distracted by the urgency, right? Versus, what's really important, right? And being and then understanding how to protect that, right? I remember a time where Terry and I were working together at the energy company here in Houston, and I would allow everybody else to fill up my calendar all day. Right? They would fill up my calendar all day. I'd be in meetings from the time I get there
Yep.
till 5 o'clock. And then after they all leave
Yeah.
is when I do my work, right?
Mhm.
So now I'm there to 8 o'clock at night. We were catching the Metro bus back then. The Metro
Yep.
bus would stop running after a certain time. I'm
Yeah,
still
yeah,
there
you had
working.
hey, that was at
Right?
8:50.
Yeah.
Gotta get that 8:50 bus.
That's
I
right. You got to
remember.
catch the last one, right? And it hit me that, you know what? And a leader told me this. She told me, she was like, if you don't dictate your time, everybody else will.
Yeah.
Right. And I learned to protect the time that I need to do the most important work, right? So that I can be successful. So, I think that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So let's move on to the next point. How to get promoted by focusing on the right work, which kind of ties directly into what we've been talking about, right? We're kind of alluding to impact versus activity, right? There is a difference. There's a huge difference, and having measurable outcomes and visible contribution. So Rob, how do professionals identify the high impact work, right? Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about you getting thrown 1,000 things at you.
Yep.
How do you identify which one of those things are the things that's going to have the most impact?
Yeah. Ralph, that's such a spectacular question, and it harkens me back to a book that someone handed me, wow, 25 years ago now, and it's a funny title. The title of the book is "Get Out of IT While You Can," and there's a picture of a man sweating, his tie is loosened around his, neck. He has a computer monitor. Remember the days when we had these big bulky,
Mm,
NEC monitors? They were
yeah.
just beasts. They weighed a ton. So he had this
Mm,
under his one arm. He had a keyboard over under this arm. He had a mouse that was a cord that was dangling down his arm, and he's running into a meeting, and that's the cover of the book. Now, here's what that book was really saying. That person, for the first time, was invited to what I call the adult table at Thanksgiving. In other words, the
mm,
boardroom.
mm,
He was the executive representing technology with his peers, the CFO, the COO, the head of sales, the head of HR. And he made the mistake that most of us make early on. We go into that meeting and we're excited to share with them all of the things we're doing in technology, how we're patching all these servers. I am going back to what Terry
mm,
said about patching. That's all important stuff, but it doesn't move the needle for the company. So to your question, we have to identify the high impact work, the things that our company, our board, our clients are expecting from us. These are tasks that increase our strategic exposure, that
yes.
bring us closer to the value proposition that puts us where we are today. That is what separates, and Terry alluded to this earlier, the director level
Hmm.
from the VP level and ultimately the C level. Going back to baseball, Terry, because I know you have such a love for it. In baseball, there's the major leagues. That is the
Mhm.
elite level of ball play. Underneath the major leagues are the minor leagues, and there's several different levels. There is triple A, there's double A, there's single A, there's even rookie ball. Double A is often referred to as the ladder. You're either going up or you're going down. And in baseball, if you're going down, it's time for you to consider another profession.
Mm, mm, mm. That's so good. That is
Boy,
so
that's
good. That
heavy.
that that is
It
That's
heavy.
is heavy, but that's life, Terry.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that takes me back, Ralph. Remember, I maybe shared this on a few episodes back. Rob, I was in the midst of making a transition. I was actually on my way down to Houston, and I had the pleasure of being mentored by a gentleman, and he totally surprised me. We were having a conversation one day, and he shared with me. He said, "Terry," he shared with me his experience, right? And he was, on the, I guess, on the in double A, but not going up. kind
Yeah.
of go in the opposite direction. And he shared with me, he said, Terry, I just stayed there too long.
Yeah.
He said, I stayed there too long.
Mhm.
And granted, he did great to help them transition, but it was at his demise.
Mhm.
And he just said, I stayed too long.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it kinda reminds me of the conversation around, being productive, versus, being busy.
Yeah.
Right, and understanding the difference between the 2. I rem I remember I'm laughing, I remember when I was a desktop support guy, and, I sat in this little bullpen with 2 other guys, right? And this one guy, I won't say his name, but, he would purposely have all of these PC parts, like, all over the place. Now, I'm naturally a clean person, everything has to be in this, position, so my desk is pristine. His is just like a complete train wreck, and every time the boss would come back there, he he would say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he'd be like, "You see all this stuff over here? I got all this stuff going on." And then the boss would be like, and then he would leave him alone, right? He used that as a technique to just show that he was busy, right? But if you want to get promoted, you have to be
Yeah.
productive.
Yeah.
That comes with impact, right? Because, that focused contribution builds promotability, right? It builds promotable evidence for that leader that, okay, you're not just focusing on doing tasks, you're focusing on doing tasks that's actually moving the needle, to Rob's point, that's impacting the metrics, that even understand the metrics. That's a whole nother
Correct.
show by itself, right?
Yes.
Just to be
Yes.
able to understand the metrics of the work that you actually impact and how it moves the company forward.
One of the harshest realities I had to face early in my leadership career was it finally resonated with me that hard work alone is not enough.
Mhm.
Gosh.
And my
No,
father,
Rob, I'm sorry, Rob. Can you say that one more time?
yeah,
That is
yeah,
so critical.
hard work alone is not enough.
Mm.
My father instilled in me at a young age to be the first kid on the baseball field to practice and be the last kid to leave.
Mhm.
And I was always hardworking. In fact, in almost every company I've been at, no one, well, I shouldn't say no one, seldom will someone question my work ethic.
Mhm. Mhm.
But that's not enough.
Mhm.
We have to not only be the first in the office and the last to leave, like you had talked about. By the way, I took the Metro bus too when I first moved to Houston, and I was anxious of if I missed that bus, I was calling my wife and
Yep.
saying, "I need you to pick me up," or I was calling an Uber. Either case, there was impact, right? The
Mhm.
the reality, though, is we have to work smarter. We have to be more efficient. We have to understand how to prioritize the work. The work that I learned from a mentor that is, what we call our we refer to them in the business sense as our strategic imperatives.
Mm.
Um, but the way this woman who had mentored me referred to them is these were the tasks that no matter what, we were gonna get done. If we were sick, if someone was out sick, if we're on vacation,
Mm.
these were the priorities that we protected, the ones that we saw move the needle, as you
Mhm.
said, Ralph,
Mm.
brought the most amount of value.
Mhm.
Those she referred to as ruthless priorities,
Mm.
meaning
Mm.
we protect them at all cost.
Love that. I love that.
Wow.
And
Ruthless priorities. Oh boy.
thank you for listening to the Leadership Sovereignty Podcast. If today's conversation helped you grow in your leadership, influence, or your career, take a moment to visit leadershipsovereignty.com. There you'll find exclusive resources, free guides, and ways to stay connected to our community of leaders who are building purpose and success. Don't forget to rate, review, and share this episode with someone who's on the rise in their career. Until next time, lead boldly, lead with purpose, and continue to walk in sovereignty. Take care.